We are on and we look at another issue, financial autonomy for the state legislature, issues and challenges. Thank God we have a capable guest in the House, a former member of the House of Assembly, an experienced politician who should be able to do justice to this topic we are bringing on right now. Let me welcome Honorable Johnson Olufatoki to the program. You're welcome to the program, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Nigeria.
Honorable Olufatoki, we have been talking about financial autonomy for state legislature for a long time now in Nigeria. Do we really need it?
Thank you very much. Let me start by maybe for the benefit of Nigerians and people of the state. We have three arms of government: the executive, legislature, and judiciary. All things being equal, they're supposed to be, as entrenched in the Constitution, they're supposed to be separation of power. But when you look at it seriously in Nigeria, there's no watertight separation of power. And the issue of financial autonomy is to guarantee and sustain, if possible, to entrench that separation of power. But there have been challenges. It is very, very necessary because when you have autonomy in the financial aspect of your office, you will not need to take cap in your hand and be begging for financing projects and office practice all the time. There are, who pays the piper, they take the tune. And it has also been as if you are looking, the legislature is looking for favor from the executive. So when the executive have an intention to maybe have to ensure that a policy is passed through. So they influence the legislature unnecessarily by buying their conscience. And one of the major factors that is actually affecting the functionality of legislature is that the fact that they are yet to have financial autonomy.
All right, there's this saying that financial autonomy gives the legislature total independence, and total independence means there won't be a rubber stamp legislature. Yes. Do we really have rubber stamp legislature? If you look at
of course, yes, of course. Not in all assembly, either the state or national. It depends largely on the caliber of people that are there. One, the individuals, the caliber of the people. Two, the system itself. For example, when the legislature will have to plead, beg, I don't want to use the word beg, but that is the actual practice, for funds to be released to carry out a project or to execute a program, then the executive will have that power to influence that decision in some places. There are certain things that will not be done, that are supposed not be done, that will be done. And when you look at the function, when you have, when we're talking of separation of power, and it does not imply that the legislature will be antagonist to the executive. But they should be seen to be performing their responsibility as it is necessary, as it's entrenched in the Nigerian Constitution. For example, major function of the legislature is appropriation. Appropriation is not limited. When you appropriate, you need to go ahead and perform oversight function. if executive presents a budget that a road is to be constructed at a particular date, and funds is released for that project, the responsibility, major responsibility of legislature is to find out whether the funds released have been judiciously utilized. But unfortunately, when legislature has questions, almost always the executive see them as enemies. When the legislature is going out, when they are going out, the press follow them, because whatever the activities is monitored by the press, and the entire world need to know what they are doing. So, well, for example, if the executive is to construct a road in a particular place, and about 90% of the fund I marked for that project have been released. After 3 months, the legislature have right to go and find out. When you get there and you discover even the grader is yet to be, the machine is not yet to be on site, you need to let Nigerians know. You need to ask questions. Ask the executive, ask the agencies, ask the ministry involved. Why this project funds have been released? Why is the job not done? So that have been the challenges. That have been, but where you have, this autonomy is, why is it important? The reason why it is important is you have free hand to really perform your job as expected. Legislators are representing the people, and we have responsibility to report back to our people, to checkmate the excessiveness of the executive. Judiciary also have their own role, but the function of legislature is to protect, number one, is to protect the interest of those that elected them there, people from their constituencies. When you fail to do that, then you have a lot of questions to answer.
Okay, Honorable Fatoki, I want you to clarify this angle. Financial autonomy for legislature. Where will these funds come from?
Thank you.
If this legislature want to have their own funds to run themselves, to do this and do that, who will fund them? Is it the masses or the government that they don't want to go to and be a...
I will explain.
Okay, go on.
Explain. When it comes, when you're talking of autonomy, financial autonomy, does not imply that the legislature will have rights to say, this will be my salary, this will be our remuneration generally. No. In fact, from the federal government, have clearly stated, it is boldly written, the salaries of legislators, the allowances, it is general, it is the same all over the nation. All right, so, but when you're talking of running the day-to-day running of the assembly, the stationaries, we have legislative commission, and that commission are in charge of day-to-day function of running the assembly, right? When you talk about even the maintenance the gadgets we have there, the generator set, the cleaners, and so on and so forth. When we have that autonomy, it is the assembly that will be paying the salary, the commission.
And not wait for approval.
No, they will not wait for approval, but there will be a specific amount that will be paid. When the money, the allocation received by the executive, they will just credit the account of the legislature straight away. Then the executive also have right to ask questions at the end of the day. Because you present, by the time you want to present your budget for the following year, you have to present how you spend the last budget. So the executive also have responsibility to ask questions before any other fund is released. But the issue is, it should not be as if every day, every week, every month, the speaker or the principal officer of the house will have to take file to the governor for approval. That is what is happening now.
If this has been entrenched in the Constitution, as you said, so why are we still arguing about it?
Okay, the challenges facing the execution, facing the realization of financial autonomy is that, one, it's not yet stated, it's not in the Constitution, it's office practice. It is a law that open law that the assembly or legislature have to agree themselves. And what the Constitution stated clearly, that not only about financial autonomy, anything that has to affect the entire nation, the people of the Nigerians, not only the National Assembly can take decision. When the National Assembly pass a bill into law, such bill will still come to the State Assembly, the 36 State Assembly, including the financial autonomy we're talking about. And the Constitution states clearly that 2/3 majority of the state must approve or pass that into law as well before it can becomes operational. So the challenges facing the financial autonomy, it is not as if the executive have been using their power to suppress that, no. It is the legislature itself that has failed to achieve that 2/3 majority. In 2010, the issue came up. The National Assembly, the House of Reps, the Senate approved, they passed that into law. They now sent the bill now back to the state. It will require that 2/3 majority, 2/3 of 36, that should be about, is it 18 or
17 or thereabouts,
should approve that. In Ogun State here, we approved it. In Oyo State, it was approved. But in mostly in part of the north, the Niger Delta in particular, all of them were against it. And I will tell you why. Corruption. It will not pay the executive if executives that are self-centered, if the legislature have financial autonomy. So the way of, I will just use the word intimidating, influencing that decision of to have that autonomy by some state governor. It's like calling them, okay, is that what you want? You want autonomy? Okay, no problem, I will give you. But if I give you, there's all other benefits. Which benefit are we talking about? Benefits that are not official. There are some states that their total take home is almost as 5 what's supposed to be the normal thing. And that is the truth.
Assemblymen or what?
Not assemblymen alone, but the legislature also involved. In this context, what we experienced there was the state government influenced the decision of the legislature in their state. All right, for example, let me give you a quick example. If the total remuneration of legislature is say 20 naira, when you are asking for autonomy, your salary will still remain 20 naira. But outside the 20 naira, there's always gratification. That also through the back door. When that happens, in some states, you have what comes in through the back door times 5 what is the normal that you're supposed to take. That is part of corruption and mismanagement we're talking that should stop in Nigeria. So if the governor tells you, okay, if you are going for autonomy, no problem. After that autonomy,
don't come for anything.
Don't come for any other thing from me. They just call themselves, well, look, let us continue the way we are doing.
Let me ask you this question.
Please.
If you have autonomy, if the legislature has autonomy, would there still be some things needed that they will still go to the executive for? You will not need anything. When you are talking of autonomy, you present budget yearly. That will take care of your total need. That will take care of even the salary of the staffs in the assembly. You will present your budget. Even if you talk of painting the entire assembly, maintenance of furniture and so on and so forth. They can also put everything will be. They can also organize official cars for members of the. Yes, now it's part of it. It's part of it. Yeah. But the question is, when you present that budget, you are not to come back and solicit for assistance on quote. And where you are now, any legislature that knows very clearly that, okay, whatever, by the time we have the autonomy, my take home, total, other, illegal, we be like 20% of what I've been taking illegally. Such legislation we concede to the request and decision of the executive to not let the bill go. So when it doesn't, when you pros and cons they are talking about is always limited to the leadership of the assembly or the entirety of the assembly. Yes, entirety of the assembly. Entirety of the assembly. Influenced by the leadership. No. Okay, let me tell you. When the law is passed at the national, it comes to the floor of it is debated at the floor of the state assembly. It is debated clause by clause. So if at the end of the day you say those who support say hi, and you have those that say nay, that more than clause by clause, and the bill which came as a law from the National Assembly become null and void. So when you have less than 2/3 of the 36 states approving it, then it cannot become law. So that is the challenge.
Okay, Honorable, let's look at this angle of allocation, state allocation. Okay. If this financial autonomy comes in now, won't it increase the budget that the executive will present to the legislature, and in turn affecting the masses who will pay levies, pay and all that for the government to gather the fund? In fact, when the state assembly have financial autonomy, the people that, it is our people that will benefit most. Why? The executive and the legislature will act as watchdog for each other. You have, whatever recommendation you are taking should be official. And you have responsibility to present report of activities, your activities in the past year. Legislation will present to the executive, this is how we expended the allocation of last year, and this is our budget for this year.
The allocation that is coming from the national, from the federal government, might not be, whatever you want to spend in your state cannot influence what is coming. It is what is coming that you base your budget on.
Oh, okay.
It is that is coming from the federal government that each state budget. You look at your IGR, what are you generating? Then the allocation coming from the federal
allocation.
You have the two together. You know, it's based on that you want to do your budget.
Because there's always template for this.
Yes, there's always. So you do your budget, and the budget of Lagos State, you can't compare it with the budget of Ogun State, because the IGR of Lagos State is far, far more than the IGR of Ogun State. In the Niger Delta, for example, they have, apart from the allocation, they have these
oil derivation.
Yes, that are taken from the federal government. So that is the additional value, plus their IGR. So all this all put together, it is a budget is an estimate of what to spend. So, and you can't budget more than what you have. When you budget more than what you can realize, then you are thinking of getting funding from another source, maybe financial institutions.
Can we adduce that state assemblies that have assembly commissions are financially autonomous?
No. Ought is because it's supposed to be so, but it's not so. But when you don't have financial autonomy and you have assembly commission, it's just for official whatever. But if you go and find out, almost always they have little or nothing to do.
Oh, just name.
It's just name.
And they collect their salaries.
So, I mean, that's the challenges we have. One of the challenges we have in Nigeria, and that is where Nigerians are calling for. When you talk of sovereign national conference, the government is always afraid. If they want to remove, but sovereign have to be there. The word sovereign, it means whatever decision is realized at the national conference will not be tampered by anybody, even the government. There's need for Nigerian government to organize national conference. Let's people, the representation of people, come together on the round table. Let us discuss how we want to move forward. Nigeria must move forward. There's no need for this integration, but if we must continue as a country, economic restructuring, political restructuring, social restructuring, all those things have to be put in place. Are we still going to maintain the presidential system of government, or want to come back to parliamentary system of government? Which one will be better for this nation? Are we thinking of regional government, or want to continue with this presidential?
The perception of the people is that the executives is always suspicious of the legislature, to the extent that they pamper them
and buy them over,
and they over pamper them.
Yes, where you have that is a statement of fact anyway. But where you have assembly that is ready to perform its function, then they can never be friend to the executive. And when that happens, such body, such a legislature should not expect any patronage from the executive. What patronage are we expecting? If we are saying we want to serve our people, what patronage? If you ask me a question, am I not a beneficiary? Yes, of course I was a beneficiary of the undue patronage. But there's nothing you, as a single person, or maybe minority can do. But when we were there, we were able to establish the fact that assembly can be independent. We performed that oversight function the way it should be performed. We suffer for it anyway, no doubt about it. All this gratification, backdoor benefits were not there again. But we went ahead for the benefit of our people. We also want to write in the book of Ogun State, in the book of Nigerians, that the 50 legislature was very, very human-oriented and not government, not executive-oriented. So it depends on the leadership. It depends on leadership have little or nothing to do. It is the general members. When you have majority having the mind to do the right thing and do things right, you get better results. When majority what I want to take, don't expect any better result from them.
Let me come with this before Charity comes in. As a former legislator, and of course, looking at what happened recently at the National Assembly, where after very many debates here and there, the president eventually relieved the service chiefs of their positions, and prompto they were presented to the National Assembly for ambassadorial positions, and prompto they were cleared. Well, personally, how do you see that?
One, if you look at the service chiefs, I think the president was pressured. They have been called severally, let these people go. You can see that he has confidence in them, and he was not prepared to let them go. But because of the pressure, he had to let them go. And maybe he decided to have soft landing for them. Soft landing on quote, because I don't know why soft landing. If you are not in government, you should have what you do to make ends meet. So you can't be in government perpetually taking salary. So I don't know why that's soft landing. Now, but if Mr. A failed to perform to expectation in a particular field, he might be able to perform in another field. Depends on the situation, all right? Then when you look at the challenges faced by the service chief, that were let go, it is difficult to say they were not competent. Because when you are given responsibility and you have resources to carry out such responsibility, then you can be challenged if there's failure. But if you have problems, if you have if your ministry or agency is not well funded, there's nothing you can do. You can hardly perform. But unfortunately, in this part of the nation, you had the people in leadership hardly resign. When I'm in office, and I know I want to perform, all those things that need to perform maximally are not there. I make requests, it's not granted. What is stopping me from leaving, tender my resignation and go? So now, when I look at, you will see almost always when people come for screening, either national or state assembly, they could just come forward, they say bow and go. If the executive have that power, if the president or the governor of the state want certain person to go, either competent or not competent, you want that person to be cleared. There's always a way of doing it. Do you know what they call brown envelope?
I don't know.
Well, but you have heard about it.
Yes.
That will roll out.
That's the back door you talked
That's
about.
the back door that I'm talking about.
I rather prefer it that maybe there was, normally, just like you do at the assembly too, when you are bringing a bill on board, you don't just bring it for the first time on the floor. You must have consulted, have caucus meeting, and probably there has been screening behind before screening in the eyes of the public.
No. When you talk of screening, screening is, don't let me talk, but the issue is that screening, when you talk of screening, screening is just once. When you screen, the legislature have right to say, okay, you...
Are you telling me that most people are just
seeing them for the first time?
There have not been caucus meetings there and there. And the president is sending Mr. A. Let us stand behind the president. Don't let us give him problem. What happens now?
The issue is this. When you are to screen, your CV will have been sent forward to the legislature. They must have studied, each of the legislators must have studied the CV.
To know where.
Yes, so when the person comes for screening, you ask questions that are objective. But when you fail to perform that, when you fail to do that, when there is influence somewhere, you don't ask questions that will give that such person problem. Because you have interest.
Okay, you are telling us that autonomy for the legislature, state legislature, will do the states more good than harm.
Seriously.
And it will allow for corruption.
That is it. Because the executive will not have any reason to influence, to intimidate the House of Assembly.
Okay.
All right. And the House of Assembly will perform their job to the maximum. Okay. You expended 100 million, 100 billion. You took 100 billion from the cover of the state last year. How have you expended it? You go to all the ministry, find out, all the parastatal and agency. So that is it.
Right.
All right. Thank you very much. We've been looking at financial autonomy for the state legislature, issues and challenges. And we've been having as our guest a former member of the State Assembly here in Ogun State, Honorable Johnson Olufatoke. Thank you very much
for
coming to the program. Charity James, yes, we have to go. We'll see again next Wednesday. Charity James is also saying, okay, let me allow you to say your bye-bye.
There's no need to say bye-bye.
All the time.
Don't speak for me, let me speak for you. And let me tell our viewers that they should keep safe. COVID-19 is still very, very much in the society. Use your face mask, wash your hands regularly, use hand sanitizer where there's no soap and water, and keep safe. See you next week, by God's grace.